We're in Califon, New Jersey, in Mike Terris's instrument shop. Mike builds banjos, guitars, resophonic guitars, mandolins. We're going to be talking to him about these fine instruments. But oh my goodness, what he's got in his hand here right now is a banjo, a resonator banjo that's as beautiful and sounds as good as anything I've ever seen in my life. The workmanship on this thing is unbelievable. And I'm going to leave it there. And as soon as I introduce Mike to you, he's going to show you this banjo and talk to you about it, and you ain't going to believe what you see. Mike, it's a pleasure to see you again. Thank you for having us up. And tell us about this instrument, would you?
Sure will. This is what you'll call a typical 5-string bluegrass banjo. I made this one out of walnut. Here, let me turn it around so you can get an idea of the back of that. It's a burled walnut neck, very richly colored and nice graining in the back, almost gunstock material.
Yes, I can see that. Beautiful, material. Beautiful figure.
But I have the back inlaid with wood in this eagle motif, because you can get a good shot of that. And these are different woods that you see here. We have burl walnut, there's a burl maple, there's straight grain walnut. This part here, that's the feathers of the eagle itself, is a redwood burl. And this up here, the eagle's head, is ash.
That thing looks almost alive, Mike.
It looks, the grain that you see there, that's the grain of the wood that just resembles feathers.
Oh my God.
And this is, I have a passion for this by finding a piece of wood and having it look like something and then taking it to the next step. Yeah. That looks like feathers. Oh, great, I'll use that for an eagle's head.
You did all of this?
Oh, yes.
And I'm going to tell you something, folks. I've been to 2 rodeos and a World's Fair. I have never seen anything like this. This eagle, you expect it to grab an American flag and come out and talk to you. It's amazing, Mike. It's beautiful. And this is all walnut, right?
Yes.
I'm breathless at this. It's amazing. It's beautiful. The carving here on the heel, did you do that?
Oh, yeah.
That is really something. Very ornately carved.
I don't know if you can see that from where you are back there, this carving.
It looks to be gold-plated.
Yeah, it's all gold-plated, engraved, which is really not a very difficult thing to do. Of course, I can't do the gold plating. I have to send that out to a person that does the plating. The engraving, I have a gunsmith do that for me. I can do the engraving, but I prefer not to because I lose patience after the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So I design it and then have them engrave it to my specs.
Very nicely done.
The wood carving, of course, I do because I'm more comfortable with that. By the way, I don't know if you could see it from there, but the eye of this eagle is actually a guitar pick.
Let me take a look.
And that gives you that real fluid look to it.
Yes. Yep. Yep. Well, that is an amazing piece of woodworking. This is a flat top?
This is a flat top. Flat top meaning the tone ring. You know, the people that are listening to this obviously know the difference.
Yep.
Flat top and arch top are 2 ways of making a banjo. And it refers to the shape of the tone ring. The flat top tone ring is flatter than the arch top, obviously, but gives you a different tone, gives you a deeper, plunkier tone, where the arch top gives you a sharper, quicker, more staccato type.
Okay, well, it's a smaller radius, I guess, on the head.
Exactly.
I know that much. Now, you were telling me about the tone ring in this. Explain again for the folks who might not know Carl and what he did several years ago.
Carl Dieterichs, a very good friend of mine from Bucks County Folk Music Show down in New Britain, Pennsylvania. Some years back, he made the exact number, I don't know. He told me 100 each of arch top and flat top tone rings. Now, Carl is a metallurgist by trade. Before he went into this folk music shop that he has down there, he and his father, I believe, were metallurgists. So he has the know-how of putting together metals, materials for making tone rings, or a good tone ring. And he told me what was in his, of which I will not explain because it's, first of all, I don't really know it that well, and secondly, it's for all I know, it's a trade secret. But no, normally brass and what is it? Brass and tin makes bronze, or copper and tin make bronze. Copper and zinc make brass. Is that it?
I slept during
One of
chemistry.
those. Bronze is a little bit better. It's more. Well, it's better for tone, for that matter. There's not a real big difference, but they are the metals are mixed together in different ratios, probably like 80%, 20%, 80% copper, and then there's some trace metals. Sometimes they put lead in there to increase machinability, if that's such a word. Otherwise, the copper or the bronze might be too brittle. But what he has done here, he has put a very hard metal in there. I don't know whether he said tungsten or cobalt or something like that.
Something exotic.
Very exotic and very hard, which hardens the metal to a point where you cannot machine it anymore. Or you try to drill it and it'll just break. Now what that does is it gives you a very, very hard tone ring, a very crisp sound to your instrument. And it's not a wimpy, plunky, muddy sound like if you get too much copper in there, for instance. But he only made 100 of these. He's been threatening to make more, but he's never carried out his threat. And I keep saying, I'll buy some. I'll buy whatever you could make. He says there has to be, to make it worthwhile, to make it efficient, he's got to make at least 100 of each, which in my mind he would have no problem selling these to makers or even to banjo players.
Yeah, he's quite a versatile individual. He's got a lot going on.
Very versatile, very knowledgeable, and very down to earth. Sometimes at the point of being crude, but that's
God bless him.
And I like him.
I've known him for many years.
Because there's really no room for misunderstanding. You know exactly where you are with Carl.
I think it's really neat that you took one of his tone rings and put it in this fine banjo. This is for sale, this banjo?
Oh yeah, all my instruments are for sale.
Yeah. This is one of the ones I think we saw at your display.
You're correct.
But I didn't look on the back of it up there. I just looked at the display. And when you pulled that out today and showed us that eagle, I just about passed out. Absolutely, absolutely beautiful. Anyone that's interested in a banjo of this quality, contact Mike. I know he'd love to talk to you. And I hope Patrick's camera does this justice. Turn it around one more time so we can get a close-up of it. And believe me, this is a great camera, but it can't do justice to the workmanship on that eagle. That is absolutely breathtaking. That's one of the most beautiful banjos I've ever seen in my life.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Now put that away. I want to talk about this. Here's another treat. Walked into Mike's shop, and here sitting on the workbench is a similar type of resonator back. Same marquetry. It's marquetry, they call that. The sort of like the inlaying of wood. Is that what that is, Mike?
Marquetry is it gives the impression of wood that's inlaid. It's very thin veneers. Let's say a 1/28 of an inch, 1/40 of an inch, or whatever the standard veneer thickness is, that is cut out in the shape and the pattern beforehand, and then glued on in one big piece.
Okay.
So it's an overlay.
I remember years ago I saw, who made these? It was a banjo made in the 20s and 30s, and the name of it was the Big Chief.
Oh yeah.
And it was
Ludwig, I think.
Ludwig, yes, thank you. He knows his stuff. And it was a marquetried Indian chief on the back. And I remember thinking to myself, God, I'd love to see one of those. I never have. I think I've seen its equal or better today, you know. But look at this, log cabin with a flintlock rifle, and having used to shoot flintlocks, I was immediately drawn to it. An axe with a silver head on it in a stump. This is really, really, really nice. How far along is this instrument, Mike?
This is the only part that's actually done.
Okay.
My method for doing these, like I said, for the Eagle resonator, is finding something that spurs my excitement, I guess would be a good word. And this one started out with the actual wood for the stock of the barrel. The piece of wood I had looked like a rifle, like a rifle, which spurred the rest of the design. So I made the resonator first on this one. Do the hard part first. Then once you do the hard part, everything else is easy.
Yeah, well, that's going to be really something. Now this is maple?
This is bird's eye, excuse me, not bird's eye, this is curly maple.
Okay.
I guess you could see the graining in there somewhat, which is not stained yet, but it will be stained to a rich, deep amber, golden amber color, similar to what you see up on the wall here, which are samples.
Okay, over here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's going to be another beauty. Is this going to be a similar level of banjo, gold plating, heavily engraved?
No, this will probably only be nickel plated, and I don't think I'll have any engraving on this one.
Okay.
Keeping it simple, along with the log cabin theme, because log cabin, flintlocks, simplicity,
Yeah.
simple way of life, so I just want to keep it simple that way.
Now, I don't like to talk specifics when I'm in somebody's shop, but plain banjo with that workmanship on the back, price range in general.
Oh, let's say the eagle that you just saw with the gold plating and the engraving and that heel carving and the marquetry inlay on the back would be probably between $8,000 and $10,000.
Okay.
Something that's like this one here that'll just be standard, no engraving on the metal. It'll be nickel plated, probably about maybe 4,000,
Okay.
4,500, somewhere in that area. So you're paying basically for decoration.
Yeah. But that, for someone who wants something of that quality, I mean, it certainly doesn't sound outrageous to me, because I'm seeing what's going into this thing. That is an amazing piece of artwork. The artist in you really comes out there. That is really wild. Now, if someone wanted a special marquetry, could that be done, or do you have to be inspired as you see the wood?
No, I could do that, within reason, obviously. My methodology, how's that for a word?
I like it.
Is to be inspired by the grain of the wood. Like in the eagle, again, going back to that, I was inspired by that piece of ash that was the feathers for the head.
Yes.
And that reminded me of the feathers, or eagle's head, which then took it to the next step in that direction. And the same thing with any of these. The wood pattern or the wood graining inspires me to the type of pattern or motif. Now, I have had some people ask for me to do a rose on the back. I have not done it. They have. I'm still waiting for their answer. I've had other requests for things like animals. I have one which I will probably show you a picture of a buffalo on the back, which was done the same way, in an American Indian motif. But yes, I could do just about anything under the limitations of what the wood will allow.
Yeah.
You can't get too much detail because you just can't get wood that fine.
Yes.
So instead of painting in details, the wood has to be the detail, as you see on the and as you see on the ends of the logs.
So this is all wood. This is no paint. This isn't anything but natural, God-created wood, interpreted and reconfigured in your shop. Amazing.
Well, there is metal in there. The barrel of the gun is actually aluminum.
Okay, I can see
And the
that.
same with the head of the axe, are pieces of aluminum that are inlaid in there. When you say no paint, the edge of the gun, to give it shadow and form, I will spray a little bit of stain on it.
Okay.
As you can see, the stain on the shadow for the log on the
Yes,
bottom.
but that's just to bring out the grain.
That's
of the
basically
wood.
shadows.
And the metal gives it more lifelike. This really looks like a flintlock rifle. I mean, that is really beautiful. Thank you. I'm so glad we got to see that. Amazing. Any of you folks who are looking for custom, truly custom, and unique, one-of-a-kind instruments, give Mike a call. I know he'd love to talk to you. I wish I could go home with that eagle banjo. I'll tell you that. Let's talk about some of your other stuff here. I see.
Yeah, I have a different approach on my resophonic guitars. I don't use the sound well like most builders use. I've developed a longitudinal brace along with a skirt baffle for structural integrity. What that does is allows more of the wood to move as opposed to when a sound well is used. And it gives more resonance to the entire guitar. The low strings have just as much balance and volume and tone as the high strings. And sometimes it's not just volume on an instrument, it's balance to make sure that the low strings and the high strings are all equal. so you have no dead spots.
Yeah, I've heard instruments described over the years. Now, I'm not a guitar player. I play a tenor guitar, which is like a tenor banjo that hasn't taken steroids yet, you know. But I've heard people describe other guitars as a lot of low-end response, a lot of high-end response, or good mid-range response. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yes, and it has a lot to do with proportion, size, thickness of wood. It's not easily defined to one specific item. It's a combination. Generally, the deeper the guitar, the deeper the body, the more bass response you're going to get. If you go wider and shallower, you don't get the same bass response. You get more of a mid-range response. And to get everything, low response, low frequencies, mid-range, and high frequencies on high strings, is very difficult. And to get it balanced and to get it loud. And when I say loud, I mean within reason.
Mm-hmm.
You can always make a loud guitar, but you want good tone to it too. So that's where the guitar makers have been experimenting for the last 400 years maybe, to try to epitomize.
That's where the minute adjustments come in, a little bit of shaving here, a little bit of fitting there, looking for that elusive, I guess the holy grail of sound, right, in an instrument.
Well, let's take this one for instance. This is a 12-string that I'm making for a client down, or a customer down there in South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
The depth of this guitar is almost 5 inches versus 3 3/4 inches for the Resophonic.
So this is a pretty...
It's going to be a low end, when I say low end, low frequency. It's going to pick up the low frequencies. Well,
Okay.
it would have that possibility.
You'd
So-
hear the bass over the treble.
Right.
Okay.
So now you want to hear the treble just as well, so what do you do to it? You could increase the stiffness of the top. And you increase the stiffness of the top on the treble side of the soundboard.
Okay.
Now here's something that very few people will realize. You take a guitar top and you have what they call tone bars. It's pieces of wood glued to the bottom of the soundboard. The thicker bars, should they be on the treble side or on the bass side? The first thing somebody would say is they should be on the bass side, because that equates to our remembrance of a xylophone.
Mm-hmm.
The bigger the bar, the lower it's going to be. That's not necessarily true in guitar, because the bigger one will stiffen the wood more and enhance the high frequencies.
Okay. Okay.
Which works backwards.
Backwards to logic.
Backwards to logic.
Yeah.
And sometimes little things like that, you make this, it's not an earth-shattering discovery, but it happens by chance sometimes. You say, wow, what did I do to get that sound?
Yeah.
And then you find out what you did. Or you hear somebody else trying it. And of course you're afraid to try it, because there's a lot of work that goes into any instrument, and you're afraid to experiment.
Yeah.
And waste your time, your wood, your money.
And your schedule. Yeah. People are waiting for this. Right.
But that's what you have to do when you're in a business as a sole proprietor. Is that what you call it? A luthier like myself that works by themselves. You have the chance to modify things.
Now, what kind of wood is this?
That is Indian rosewood.
Is that one piece?
No, it's joined on the here
Okay.
and there at the top. It's bent in 2 pieces,
All right.
both sides. Now that looks like Brazilian rosewood, but that's just the color of it. It has, normally Indian rosewood has a purple-brown color, almost bordering on an olive brown, like an umber. This one here has a nice rich chocolate brown color, which is a very interesting look for Indian rosewood.
So what kind of a top and bottom will you put on this?
Well, here's the top and bottom right over here on the shelf.
Okay.
This is the back, also of Indian rosewood, joined in the center by a strip of maple.
That's an interesting looking piece of wood. A lot of colors in there.
Yeah.
Or not colors isn't the right word.
We have variations in colors. There's
yeah.
purples, there's an umber, there's like a pinkish salmon color, there's a chocolate brown. That's what makes a piece of wood unique. If it's all the same, too much the same, it just looks...
Now, will that be
random.
stained or polished or...?
It will be, this will be probably lacquered with nitrocellulose lacquer. I do use French polish on some of my instruments, which is not applicable for this type of guitar here.
So these 2 woods are basically the same?
Yes.
Are they the same thickness?
No. No, the sides will be a lot thinner. These sides will probably be 80 thousandths of an inch, which is just a couple thousandths more than a 16th inch thick. Right next to it over here, you see the top of the guitar.
Okay. I can see it drawn out there, yeah.
Yeah, you could, I don't know if you could see that over there. But, and it's just been joined. This has to be sanded yet. There's still some glue showing there. And I don't know if you could actually see the thickness. That's just a little less than an eighth of an inch
Okay.
thick.
And what kind of wood is that?
This is Sitka spruce. And here again, Sitka spruce is used almost exclusively now for steel string guitars. It's strong, readily available, not too expensive. It's in good supply. It sounds good, it's strong, it finishes well, it satisfies a lot of criteria.
Now,
for a top.
I don't know much about building guitars, so this is an education for me. And I'm sure some people are going to be thinking the same thing I do, all right? Because like I say, my knowledge is zero. I always thought that the top of a guitar was one piece of wood that was just cut out. But this is obviously two pieces joined together. Is that because we can't get wood that wide, or is there a engineering or musical reason for it, tonal reason?
You're right on both counts. You can get wood wide in one piece. Some of these Sitka spruce trees might be 7, 8, 10 feet wide at the base, and they start cutting them 10, 15 feet off the ground because there's less flaws up there. But a tree that wide, you're obviously going to get a wide enough piece to make the guitar in one shot. Unfortunately, when you use one piece of wood, it tends to be unstable. Whereas two pieces, which are called book matched, and book matched is taking one piece of wood and splitting it out like this here. It equalizes all the stresses. So if it's going to shrink in one, it's going to shrink in the other the same. It's going to have the same amount of expansion. It's going to warp and curve less by having a two-piece top and back.
How do you fasten it? What kind of glue could possibly
be that strong? Nothing more than what you see over there on the shelf. It's either Franklin Tight Bond or Elmer's Carpenter's glue. Even something like Elmer's glue, white glue for crafts, is perfect for that joint.
Okay.
It doesn't sound strong, but it is. It's stronger than the wood.
Wow, it's amazing. And that withstands all the tension and pressure that's subjected to it, being strung up with the strings and played and all the vibrations and everything. And
it stands that, Pat, because you're pulling in that direction.
Okay. You're not pulling this way.
No, if you pull that way, you'd break it, because this is very weak across this way, but very strong that way.
Gotcha.
Now, if you were to press on it or hit it with your knuckle or any of the other things that will destroy guitars, it'll break very easily. The wood is strong, but it's not that strong.
Yeah.
And it has to be made thin and delicate to allow for full tone.
Okay. Well, that was an education for me. I didn't realize that it was done. And this here, does this stay in the guitar?
Yes, that's the heel block.
That's part of the body.
That's when you glue the two sides together. They have to be reinforced somehow.
Yeah.
Also, it stabilizes the top, the back, the sides, and this is where your end pin goes.
Okay.
Which holds it supports the guitar, has to support the weight.
Is there a projected finish date for this instrument?
I would say 2.5 months down the road.
Okay. So it's a step by step, little by little, let it develop, and wow.
And many people will say, well, how fast could I get it? And I say, you can't make a good guitar fast.
Yeah.
You can make a good guitar or a fast guitar.
Go back to my Pennsylvania rifle, the first custom rifle I ever ordered. The guy said, yep, I'll make it for you. Don't want any money right now. I'll call you when it's done. And if you call me, I'm not going to make it. He made it very clear. And this guy was he was a woodworker, a craftsman, and it will be done when it's done. And I'm glad I waited, because it was a fine piece of work. And but I understand where you come from there. It's got to develop at its own pace, and the wood has to be right, and everything has to go. And if something goes wrong, you got to fix it.
That's right.
Until it's right. So, guys, when you're talking to a craftsman, a guitar builder, an instrument builder, a violin builder, for God's sakes, don't try to pin them down on time. Listen to these people, because it's their heart and soul going into these instruments.
That's correct.
It's really neat to see these things coming together. Are these various fretboards that are going to go on these?
Yes, Pat. This one will go on to the 12-string guitar that I'm working over here, and these two are for the resonator guitars.
Now that's ebony, I imagine?
They're
Or?
both ebony.
Okay.
I usually fret mine first. A lot of makers will put the frets in after the neck and fingerboard are installed on the body. It's just a matter of personal preference. I just like to do it this way.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to see these in the process of being built. Patrick, of course, I told you, plays a metal-bodied resophonic guitar. But I've often wondered, what do they look like inside? And it's totally different from a flat top. It's a different instrument altogether.
The tone is, what's the word? Produced differently. You know, with the resophonic, you're using metal pieces here.
Cone, yeah.
You have the cone that sits in there, which sits right on top of this here. And this here is only about 8/1000ths of an inch thick. So how thick is that? 2-3 pieces of typing paper, maybe?
Yeah, not much. If you breathe on that, it's going to dent, right?
Right. But that's where your tone comes in. This sits on top of it.
Now, is that a spider bridge?
This is called a spider bridge. There's 8 legs on it, and your strings go over the top. There's a little wooden saddle that fits into the slot here. The strings go from the tailpiece over this, and the cover plate. Well, let's see. I have it somewhere. Here it is.
So the actual vibrations are going
And there's the cover plate.
into the cone and then coming up from the cone and the bottom of the guitar. Out the
Yes,
top.
that's correct.
And this gives it that.
This is on a very, it has the same tension as a guitar, standard 6-string guitar, but there's very little pitch angle on the bridge.
Okay.
I mean on the tailpiece. So it's almost flat. So it's not pressing down hard. There's a lot of tension this way, but not much going down. Otherwise you'd end up flattening or collapsing your cone here. But this is what gives you that metallic tone of the resophonic guitar.
Now I know what happened to my tenor resophonic guitar. Now see, you learn something every time you visit somebody who knows their business. I have a 1929 National Resophonic tenor guitar, and the cone collapsed on it several years ago, and I took it to Carl, and he replaced the cone and made it right. But I'm wondering, why did that happen? It has a non-standard tailpiece on it. It has a banjo tailpiece somebody put on. Increased the pitch of the strings, and there's too much tension. Pow! Collapsed it.
Right.
So physics is physics, isn't it? So I learned something. I got to find myself an original tailpiece for that thing, or it's going to happen again, isn't it?
Well, another
Eventually.
thing could have happened. There's a screw. Well, you don't see it, but this is actually screwed to the cone. And the tension there is of utmost importance, because if it's too loose, you're going to get a rattle and a buzz. And there's a very fine line. Maybe only 1/8 of a turn of the screw will bring it to just the right tone.
Yeah.
And if you start tightening too much, the screw will just push the feet of this into the cone.
Yeah.
And it'll collapse the cone the same way.
So that's really something. So the balance on any instrument is very important. Those forces are something to deal with. Yeah.
It's interesting because you work with the wood. Up on the shelf there, you'll see there's a bunch of pieces of. Here's where I sometimes veer from tradition. Those are not Sitka spruce. I have cedar and I have Douglas fir tops for F-style mandolins. Oh, here's one here that's partially, that's redwood. So I make them out of redwood too.
Now these are actually carved, right?
They will be carved, just like a violin. It's carved like a dish from the top and the back.
And do they stay that thick?
No. This is what I start with.
Okay.
And it's carved very thin. But each wood will sound a little bit different. But as you work it, you start getting. Let me use this as an example.
Oh, good. I was going to ask you to pull that down next. A work in process mandolin. Now this is an A.
This is what's considered an A model.
A model.
Versus the F model. It has the scrolls and
Okay.
the points down here. And this one does not have the back glued on yet.
Good. We can see what it looks like underneath.
I don't know. I don't think so. You'll cut this part out here.
Yeah,
I've
good.
got some cleats on the back because I thought it was going to be weak there. So I just put those.
Okay.
I don't want people to see that.
Okay.
But this one has a cedar, red cedar top, which you could buy at any lumber yard for that matter. As a matter of fact, that whole corner over there, there's boards of cedar over there stuck up against the wall.
So what does that do for the sound?
It makes it a little bit drier. Now, how do you explain dryness? It's not something you can explain. You can't explain sound
Yeah,
to somebody.
but it'll be different.
It'll be probably a little bit mellower. Not have the same sharp edge as spruce.
Okay.
That does not mean it's not as good. It's just different.
Well, I can relate to that. My tenor guitar is, I believe, mahogany. And I'm told that the spruce-topped tenor guitars are much brighter than the mahogany, which are more
Yes, that's
subdued. I happen to like the sound of mine because I wanted that, but the spruce tops, they tell me, are much brighter and a little more piercing than the others. So there's a good example of, even I can hear that, you know. And on banjos, tenor banjos, different size heads. I have a 12-inch Vega with a tubaphone that's a much different sound than my 10 3/4 inch Slingerland, or from the old Silver Bell. It really, all those things make a big difference in the way an instrument sounds. So you working with the wood and hitting it kind of tells you maybe close to what you can expect in the final product. If somebody says, I want a bright one, I want a
Yes.
mellow one, but you never know until it's done, do you?
Never know till it's done. Generally, the shape has a lot to do with it, the quality of the wood, the thickness of the top, back, and sides. Sound is elusive. There's no such thing as a guaranteed sound.
Yeah.
Although there has to be a minimum guaranteed sound, otherwise somebody, you wouldn't get any orders. But as an example, I don't know if you could hear this over there, but just handling the wood, just touching it, you could hear the resonance in it. And that would be just about anywhere. Before the top is glued on, you get that same resonance.
Yeah, you hit it up here, you can hear it down here.
And it has to be that way, because if this does not vibrate with this, then it's going to vibrate against it and destroy tone.
Okay, gotcha.
It's my belief that the whole instrument has to vibrate together.
And does that mean matching woods or just being sure they're compatible?
Yes and no, to answer your question.
Elusive.
Diplomatically.
Yeah.
There's no rule to that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you put something together, it just doesn't sound right. And if it doesn't sound right in the beginning, you might as well just throw it out, because it's never going to sound any better
Yeah.
when you work your way through it.
Now, will this one be finished, or is this a work in process?
This is work in process now. I have to make the back for it yet, which probably will be in another month or so. I'd like to say it'll be done in another 2 months, but it probably will not.
Now, would this be something a bluegrass player would be interested in? Or?
Yes and no. Normally the bluegrass players like the F style, like I was showing you there
Yes.
with those. It gives it a little bit brighter sound. Those 2 points that you see here brighten the sound phenomenally, and that scroll on top does the same. There's more mass.
So that's more than just decoration. It serves a purpose.
Serves a purpose. These will, the A models are more of an old-timey sound. They have a very dry, plunky sound.
Okay.
And players that are into old-timey music know what I mean by that. Here again, it's a difficult thing to explain. It doesn't have the same ring or the same brightness. It sounds old-fashioned.
Well, in old-time music, and there again, this is just my opinion, the instruments don't seem to take leads like they do so much in a bluegrass band, where each one will come up and do a bunch of real fancy work and then back off. Old-time tends to stay more homogenized.
That's a good word. I never.
And maybe this type of instrument doesn't clash so much with an open back banjo or something like that. So I can see where it might fit, but the other ones will fit too.
Yeah.
It just depends on what the individual wants, doesn't it? Yeah. That's really something. What else we got? I see some all kinds of bindings up here.
Oh yeah, bindings are the part that goes around the edge of the guitar on the top and back, and it basically is for the purpose of protecting the edge against knocks and bangs. It entails a lot of work, a lot of extra work, And some of the manufacturers on their newer instruments, to keep prices down, are not putting binding on either the top or back. But it does one other thing. It tends to tighten up the sound of an instrument. An instrument that has no binding will sound loose and unfocused, where binding will focus, give it a little more focus. And I don't know if I could explain it any deeper than that. Almost as if the notes are wrapped in cotton.
Well, to me it would. Now this does have. It's got like an edge that'll fit in, right? To the,
Oh yeah.
And it's really connecting the wood even better than the glue. It's supplementing the glue, maybe?
Not really,
Or
because this is celluloid.
Okay.
And when they put that ivory color to it, they call it ivory.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you can't get the graining in there, but it actually looks like the old-fashioned ivory.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a celluloid product, and celluloid is what? Some sort of cellulosic product.
Yeah.
And,
Was before plastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
now this cannot be glued very easily to wood, and it's probably the most difficult thing in any kind of instrument construction is the incompatibility of materials.
So how do you get it in there?
It has to be glued with good old-fashioned Duco cement.
So you're using plastic or model cement.
Model cement. And this is the best material for gluing this.
Okay.
But still, this does not, celluloid will not adhere well to the wooden channel.
Okay.
Here's an example. This one already has the binding on it,
All right.
as you can see. And it's got black, white, black inline, which is called purfling.
Mm-hmm.
That's glued on with, here again, that Duco cement, which will hold, but it won't hold as well as two pieces of wood glued together.
Okay. So how does
Similar materials.
How does it tend to bind the sound together? If it isn't doing it by connecting the wood, or is it another thing that you just can't explain?
You can't really put your finger on it. It just does it.
Okay. It sure adds to the instrument. I mean, looking at this and looking at that.
It's more or less standard on all instruments. The amount of binding and purfling increases with the cost of the guitar. Not necessarily the quality, but the cost.
Yeah.
The more costly an instrument is, the more binding it has on it. As a Model 45, for instance, actually has pearl all around the edge. And that gives it a whole different sound altogether, because you have a very dead material in there versus wood, which is a very live material, if that makes any sense.
You know, it doesn't make sense, but I understand what you're saying. This is almost like a free lesson in you know, an overview. Like, remember the 60-minute manager they used to have out, the books? You know, what goes into an instrument besides a lifetime of effort and learning and art. I was going to say artsmanship, but artistic interpretation of wood and metal and the wishes and the desires of your customers and all those things that go to make a beautiful instrument. Would you do one more thing for me? Pull that little guitar out. Let's take a look at a finished Mike Terris guitar.
What we have here is it's what's considered a 00 size, 00.
And
size.
explain that. What does that mean?
That's just a size that the Martin factory, the Martin company, started designating their guitars back, I guess, even back 1880s, 1890s. And
It's become a standard of measurement?
a standard of measurement. Anybody you talk to, if you say a D meaning the dreadnought size, that pear shape, like this guy here.
Okay.
O size is, triple O is smaller, double O is smaller yet, single O or 0 is smaller yet. Then you have the 12 fret neck and the 14 fret neck, which actually change the proportions. So this is what's I think I said double O, right? 00 size.
So first of all, it's a beautiful instrument. I love the top. It's a little different. It's an open,
it's a
slotted
peg
top.
head.
Yeah.
And this is basically the top is what you would have found on a guitar back in 1880 and 1870 with the mechanical machines on the side versus the peg. Very simple, no fancy pearl, no inlay.
Now, is that spruce on the top?
This is spruce. And it's what you call a toner, meaning the spruce was too white, which I don't like. So this is toned down a bit. The toner being applied in the finish, mixed with the finish.
Okay.
And sprayed on that.
Back and sides?
Back and sides, this is Brazilian rosewood.
That's a beautiful hunk of wood.
And It's not what you call the best. This is flat sawn.
Mm-hmm.
But that's about the quality you get out of Brazilian rosewood nowadays. When you can find it, that is.
Mm-hmm. Now, when did you build this guitar, Mike?
This was built back in 1993, I think.
Okay.
It has a date, April 1993.
Wow, is this your guitar?
This is my
This
personal
is Mike's
one.
guitar.
And I play this. I like it. You know, a small guitar is not going to give you the same voluminous backup and rhythm as a D size. And it's not meant to. It's made to be a parlor-sized guitar.
Mm-hmm.
After all, Joan Baez, if you remember her, made a career for many decades on a zero size and double size guitar.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good for accompanying a voice.
Sounds very nice.
It has a nice light sound. It has resonance.
A lot of resonance, yes.
And it's balanced. You know, you can go. Go up the neck and get.
Those notes don't want to go away.
No.
They want to stay there.
And that's what's difficult in making any instrument. You might be able to get 2 or 3 good notes down here. You play it somewhere else and it's dead. Now, how do you eliminate that? I don't know. I don't know how it's done. You have to feel it. Intuition, is that what we were talking about before? You could just, by the feel of the wood, just how it feels and the sound it makes when you feel it.
You have to love the wood.
You'll be able to figure that out. That's not something you can teach somebody.
Yeah.
You have to figure that out by making and throwing away many guitars, or many, whatever you're making, banjos.
What's the most popular size that you make? What do people request the most?
For guitars, is that D size with the extended body.
Okay.
The extended body means instead of attaching it to the 14th fret, it attaches to the 12th fret. Meaning that the shoulders, instead of being real sharply curved, they're more rounded. It gives you a bigger body.
Okay.
The bigger body gives a little bit more volume. When I say volume, I mean cubic inch volume and not loudness. Although it does lead into loudness. It gives you more of a fullness for a bigger body. So there's more presence, is that the word?
Yeah.
More presence
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
without necessarily being louder.
Very complex, very involved. There's an awful lot goes into one of these things. And I'm going to tell you, I like everything I've seen here. This is a beautiful sounding instrument, beautifully made instrument, very simple in its design, but it's obviously made by a master craftsman.
Why, thank you very much.
Seeing these was great, but I got to tell you, this and that eagle blow me away. And this has a reclining nude in it, of all things, again, which Patrick will appropriately drape, if you don't mind, when we display it. But again, the use of the wood, it's just amazing. I'm not even going to ask you how long it takes to do something like that. It's got to be an astronomical amount
there's a
of
lot
time.
of time.
Astronomical.
The actual execution of cutting the pieces out doesn't take long. It's
Yeah.
designing it, finding
Yes.
the wood, or finding an appropriate use of the wood, I guess is a better
Yes. But really, craftsmanship, art, all going together to make banjos that are truly unique, one of a kind, never be another one like it. Does this have a Carl tone ring in it?
This does too.
Yep. Okay. So you get one of these really wild banjos, beautiful piece of curly maple there.
Stained a real rich amber
Yeah.
brown color. I've got nice
Wow.
carving in the back of this one too, as you can see.
Well, I tell you, like I say, I wish I could afford that eagle one, or it would be gone today. I would take that in a minute. But I can see it's really beautiful inlaying, of course, the gold, and what a great thing to see. And I thank you for sharing all this with us. And folks, if you want a one of a kind work of art, this is the guy to talk to. And his name ain't Art; it's Mike Terris. And come on over here with your banjo again. His name ain't Art, it's Mike Terris, artist, instrument builder, and woodworker. It's amazing. I thank you for having us. This has been a pleasure. I've learned things here today. I've learned what goes into the building of these beautiful instruments, and the amount. It's a lifetime of work and a lifetime of learning, teaching yourself, learning from others. Guys, when you visit an instrument builder of this caliber, don't worry about what he gets to make it. Look at the instrument and decide if you have to have that, and then put him to work, because you can't put a price on some of this stuff, can you? It's very, very difficult.
It's interesting because a banjo like this one here would be above $10,000.
Yeah.
But if you figure that out to a cost per hour, I might make $6 an hour.
Yes.
If I'm
Yeah.
lucky.
Yeah. So realize the amount of work that goes into a piece of art, and just amazing. Now, on the other side, you do make a standard banjo
Oh yeah,
without the fancy woodwork and all. Where do you start on those?
about 2,600.
Okay, which would have still a first quality to them.
Oh yeah, everything would be just it would just have less ornamentation.
Yeah.
The wood might be a little plainer, not as curly. It would be stained just the same, of
Yeah.
course. Just standard nickel plating, no engraving, no carving. Standard inlays, well, kind of like what's on the Eagle banjo is my standard inlay
Yeah.
pattern.
So if you're fortunate enough to be able to afford a piece of art, one of a kind, you can get it here, or just a reasonably priced first quality instrument. He can take care of you there too. Call him, visit his website. He'd love to talk to you. Do you put on your website where you're going to be if you're going to a festival or anything like that?
No, because I don't go to the same festivals that I used to. I just can't afford it time-wise or money-wise,
Yeah.
which is very expensive. And I just find it much more effective, cost-effective to advertise either in a magazine or over the web.
Okay, so visit Mike. What is your website URL?
The website is www.terrisguitarmaker, TerrisGuitarmaker.com.
Easy enough. TerrisGuitarmaker.com.
TerrisGuitarmaker.com.
Visit him there, shoot him an email, or give him a call, and talk about these great instruments. He's a great guy. I'm glad we met him, and I'm glad to consider you my friend right now.
Well,
thank you very much. This has been great.
For driving up, Pat.
Thank you.